The Hall of Records of the Great Pyramid. I use the expression Hall of Records because Edgar Cayce used it. In his visions, he located the Hall of Records under Sphinx Spa, which I do not rule out as a possibility. It is supposed that in there we will be able to find the records of the lost civilization of Atlantis. From these records, we should find more information of who were the builders of the Great Pyramid and other knowledge that came from Atlantis. I will describe my Hall of Records, which in this case is in the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid. Certainly, it is not the only room with inscriptions, but rather there are more, which is what the translation of the invisible text should tell us. From my calculations, there are 4 entrances into the Great Pyramid, one for each side of the world. We have opened the one on the north side. Ancient builders have written texts on the walls, ceiling, and floor of the King's Chamber in the Great Pyramid. The text is written with the help of Gemal in a mathematical code. Incredibly genius work that was hidden from us for thousands of years, yet right in front of our eyes, and to our minds unreachable. The text itself is written in Prakrit or Sanskrit, which leads to suggest the identity of the ancient builders. The first thing that got my attention were the values of the numbers that I was obtaining from different combinations of calculations. In certain instances, I was thinking that someone was playing with these numbers. For example, a rough calculation of the volume of the King's Chamber in meters gives me a result that is approximately equal to the diagonal line of the square base of the Great Pyramid in meters. With precise harmonization, we get the exact number to the decimal. Weird, right? I wonder, why would someone put in the effort during the construction of the King's Chamber to repeat in its volume the value of a diagonal line of the square base of the Great Pyramid in meters? Then I started to test these numerical values with so-called my numerical constant. However, I will also use my number of pi value, 3.142696,805, and so on. I will not be explaining the reason why I use this number here, since it was already covered in my previous work. But the most important number for verifying the harmony between numbers is Bloodhound, of value 3.645. The idea is that if any number has harmony with this number, chances are it wasn't chosen by coincidence. Again, we can ask ourselves, why would someone harmonize these numbers? The volume of King's Chamber in royal cubits and the ratio of Bloodhound give us a value of a diagonal line of the square base of the Great Pyramid in royal cubits, to the exact decimal. Again, we see the repetition of these numbers, but this time in royal cubits. The walls of King's Chamber are built in 5 rows of the same height. Again, there is play with numbers, in which we can see that 1/5 of the height of King's Chamber is the same as the volume of King's Chamber, but 1,000 times smaller. In this way, they have left traces for harmonization of numbers, which is very important in decoding the message. This isn't the only case where this happens, but rather a rule for perfection of architecture. This is another sign that these dimensions were used for a purpose, that the size and shape of the usable space in King's Chamber is conditioned to show certain dimensions. Why was such effort used to show and preserve certain numerical values? By studying the works of other researchers, the work of Mr. Pietri, that is, the more detailed drawings of King's Chamber, have grabbed my attention the most. By looking at his drawings, we can see that the rocks of different sizes were used for the construction of King's Chamber, and that they weren't positioned the way we would normally expect. If they only wanted to build a wall, they would do what we do today. Make all the rocks the same size, or as close as possible, and arrange them in a brick wall style. If King's Chamber was built in this way, it would look like this. However, it doesn't look like that, but rather it looks like this. The ancient builders are reminding us again to the need for better observation and thinking about their purpose for this type of construction, which to us is unknown. By counting all the rocks on the walls, we can notice the following. East wall has 18 rocks. West wall also has 18 rocks. North wall has 27 rocks, and the south wall has 36 rocks. By adding them up, we get a number 99, to which we will add 1 for the entrance, as a vacant place in King's Chamber, and now we get a number 100. Is this just a coincidence? The ceiling has 9 rocks. The floor supposedly had 18 rocks. Now it has 22. We can notice that all of these numbers are divisible by 9. Another coincidence?
The logical conclusion that everything was made according to plan is repeated, as if the ancient builders are trying to capture our attention and say, "Look closely, and think about why we made things this way." Since my conclusions are a result of long years of research and gaining knowledge from many different sources, I'm not able to fully show my way of thinking. I will try to simplify things and enter a zone of more comprehension. Let us go back to the volume of King's Chamber expressed in royal cubits. Each row has a volume of 453.623143 royal cubits cubed. This number is extremely important because it is the same number to the decimal for the contemporary height of the Great Pyramid expressed in feet. Again, there is repetition of external dimensions of the Great Pyramid, which shows us the importance of this number. This number has multiple purposes, which goes to show that the contemporary height of the pyramid was a planned out dimension, and not just a result of deterioration over time. On another hand, it gives us the information that the ancient builders knew about feet as a measuring unit and its mathematical geometrical connection to the meters and royal cubits. Here I have to mention the dimensions of the Grand Gallery in the Great Pyramid. We will not go into too much detail concerning the calculations because this will take too much of our time, and it is work worth its own video. The Grand Gallery is practically the central and largest room in the Great Pyramid. If we calculate its volume by using only its rough dimensions, that is, its average width and length, the volume of the Grand Gallery would be 4,330.26 royal cubits cubed. In this case, we have neglected the actual shape of the gallery and its net volume, but rather we have imagined her as a proper prism. We will divide the volume of the Grand Gallery by 9, because we have 9 equal rows. If you look at the calculation, we get 481.14. This is an identical number to the height of the Great Pyramid in feet. Again, we can see repetition of the external dimensions of the Great Pyramid, which points to their importance and preservation of dimensions in case of possible change or loss over time. We will come back to this dimension later. In the following work, I will explain how we can get numbers for translation. Like I have said before, the walls of the King's Chamber are divided in 5 equal parts. Now we will divide the volume in 5 equal parts or layers. Every row or layer has a volume of 453. Therefore, we will use this number to extract any text that is written on the walls of King's Chamber. Thus, the meaning and translation of this number is very important. We can see how this looks in the following image. Before we continue, I have to give some information on how to translate numbers to letters, letters to words, and several words into meaningful sentences or expressions. You have to keep in mind that we will only use whole numbers for translating and that vowels are added in reading and speaking. This is how we read and write hieroglyphs. For modern languages, we have Hebrew and Arabic that use this style of reading and writing. Numbers are carriers of sound, and every number has a sound or sounds that belong to it. To understand what we're translating, we can use any alphabet we wish, but it has to transmit the same sounds as numbers. For this occasion, I have prepared a Gemal for the English language. This image shows Gemal for the English language, with the proper pronunciations. From the table, we can see that the number 453 can be translated in the following way. Number 400 as sound T or D, number 50 as sound N, and number 3 as sound G or J. Now we will put together all possible combinations or anagrams. For this case, I will use sound T, even though there's very little difference between sounds T and D. Since Prakrit or Sanskrit are in question, I picked two equally important translations, Ganita or mathematics and Janita or people, which we can understand as civilization or humanity. There's a possibility that both of these translations are involved in understanding of the text. By mentioning people means that the text was designated to them or that people have written it, and mathematics means that math was used in writing these texts. We're back to number 481, the height of the Great Pyramid in feet, which gives us the support we need in pronunciation of mathematics. From the table, we translate the number 400 as sound T or D, number 80 as sound P or F, and number 1 as sound A or E. The anagram for number 481 can be seen in the image. We will look at the anagram path, which in combination with the anagram Ganata gives us Patiganita, which in translation means arithmetic. Arithmetic is a Greek word composed of two words, arithmos or numbers, and tika or art, which we can translate as art of numbers. Generally, arithmetic is a branch of mathematics which studies numbers, that is, traditional numerical operations such as adding, subtracting, dividing, multiplying, squaring, and taking roots of numbers. If you look at all the types of calculations we have been doing so far on the dimensions of the Great Pyramid, we can see that there was use of arithmetics, which proves that these are proper expressions and that they weren't chosen accidentally. If we turn to the east or the west wall of King's Chamber, we can see that the first upper row has a single rock, which means this one rock will have a volume of a whole row, whose value is 453, shown on the image. On that rock, the title says Ganita, that means mathematics, or Janita, that means people. When we translate the text on the wall, we get the proof of the title on the top. I'm not capable of translating the whole text since I do not have the exact measurements of the rocks. We have to keep in mind that the slightest deviation from the perfection will give us a completely different values of numbers, and in that sense, a completely different text. If we look at the north wall, we can see that the first upper row has two rocks, which means that there are two different volumes, and in turn means we have two separate words. By measurements and observation, we get the following numbers, 244 and 209. From the table, we can translate the number 244 as sound R for number 200, sound M for number 40, and sound D for number 4. For the number 209, we get the sound R for number 200 and sound T for number 9. The anagrams for the numbers 244 and 209 are on the following image. We will use the anagrams dharma and rita. The combination of the two chosen anagrams gives us dharmarita. Dharma is a concept of central meaning in Indian philosophy and religion. It also has multiple meanings in Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, and Jainism. Therefore, it is difficult to give a single definition of dharma, since the word has a long and diverse history and covers a complex set of meanings and teachings. In the West languages, there is no equivalent synonym for the word dharma. In the Vedic religion, Rita is the principle of natural order that regulates and coordinates the workings of space and everything in it. In direct translation, dharma has a meaning of that which is fixed or firm, which comes from an older Vedic Sanskrit translation as maintainer or supporter. Rita has a meaning of order, rules, or truth. A short translation of Dharma Rita would be cosmic order or cosmic law. I have defined it as an expression, internal law preserves order. This means that the text under this expression was supposed to contain the information about the cosmic law. If we turn to the south wall, we can see that the first upper row contains 3 rocks of different sizes. If we calculate the volumes, we get 3 values, 196, 213, and 71. Therefore, we have 3 words or 3 expressions in this case. If you look at the table, we can translate the number 196 as sound k for number 100, sound s for number 60, and sound t for number 9. Then number 213, which gives us sound r for number 200, sound e for number 10, and sound g or j for number 3. Then for number 71, we get the sound a for both number 71 and 1. Their anagrams are on the following image. From the possible anagrams, we will choose SKT for number 196, RIG for number 213, and AA for number 71. We combine RIG or GIR with AA so that we get Riga or Gira. Now we put everything together and we get Sakti Riga or Sakti Gira. In Sanskrit, the word Sakti means power or energy force, but we can also think of this word as the name for the goddess Adi Parasakti. Here we can also express the word Sakata as Sukta, which we can combine with the word Riga or Gira. I would like to mention here some of the meanings of this word, like hymn, good or proper speaking or recitation, song of praise, or song worth of praise. The word or expression Ariga we can connect with Rigveda. The Rigveda is an ancient Indian collection of Vedic Sanskrit hymns. This is one of the 4 sacred canonical texts of Hinduism, known as Vedas. This is one of the oldest known Vedic Sanskrit texts. The word Rigveda comes from 2 words, the first being Rig, or Rik, which means praise, glory, or chronicle, and the second word Veda, which means knowledge. Together, they can be translated as glory of knowledge or knowledge worth of praise. The word Gira in Sanskrit means sound, speech, or word. Now, looking at the complete translation for the first row of the south wall, I would go with power of words, power of sound, or power of speech. This expression leads me to believe that the text on the wall is part of Rigveda. If we have 4 Vedas and 4 entrances to the pyramid, there's a possibility that each entrance is dedicated to one Veda. What can we conclude from the translation of the text? The text alone proves my previous theories and gives us more information for further thinking. Firstly, it tells us that the text is written in Prakrit or Sanskrit, that is a group of Indo-European languages. The text is written by people, or it was intended for people for some unknown reason. While the text was written, mathematics were involved, which is something that is immune to change over time. Everything was written in a genius and clever manner. The text also mentions Dharmarita and Rigveda, which means that the ancient builders knew of Hinduism, or some form of Hinduism. Prediction of future. I have found a way for translating the text on the walls of King's Chamber and show the practical use of them. This is the oldest written text in history and should be approached with great attention. With precise measurements, we will have the correct numbers and in turn words. Everything was made with perfection, and therefore we too have to stick with perfection. There are other rooms in the Great Pyramid that too will need to be looked at. By opening the other 3 entrances to the Great Pyramid, we will obtain even more information about her builders. The middle and small pyramid contain texts as well that are hidden in mathematics and geometry. Therefore, there is a lot of important work ahead of us. This way, we will open another chapter in human history. I hope that you all will be happy with my work, and if you have any questions or comments, you can send them on my email written on screen.